Hello and welcome to Classic Novel Month 2. Last year we looked at some of my favorites of classic literature, many that I've read in school. This year, however, we'll look at some of my favorites of classic literature, many that I've read in school. Anyway, this is Classic Novel Month 2, The Reading. Okay, so this week will be The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. So, let's get to it. It's Metamorphin time! This was a stupid joke. The story begins with the big twist of the book. Here's the first line. As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous vermin. That's it. That's the story. That's what you remember. He gets transformed into a bug, so yeah. He thinks it's a dream and reflects on how dreary life as a traveling salesman is. Because he works and sleeps. That's his sad, sad life. As he looks at the clock, he realizes that he has overslept and misses his train to work. He thinks about the consequences of this delay. Gregor becomes annoyed at how his boss never accepts excuses or explanations from any of his employees, no matter how hardworking they are, displaying an apparent lack of trust. You're late. I'm sorry, sir, but I was stabbed on the way to work today. You should not have gotten stabbed if you knew it would make you late for work. Gregor's mother knocks on the door, and he answers her. She is concerned for Gregor because he's late for work, which is unorthodox for him. Gregor is like me in that regard. I try to never miss school so that if I'm absent, something is seriously wrong. I'm either really sick or dead. Thankfully, I come back after like 12 hours, so it's more of a minor inconvenience. Gregor answers his mother and realizes that his voice has changed, but his answer is short, so his mother doesn't notice the change. Gregor, are you okay? Okay, just get dressed and come down. His sister Gret, to whom he was very close, then whispers through the door and begs him to open it. He tries to get out of bed, but is incapable of moving his body. While trying to move, he finds that his office manager, the chief clerk, has showed up to check on him. He finally rocks his body to the floor and calls out that he will open the door shortly. Offended by Gregor's delayed response in opening the door, the chief clerk warns him of the consequences of missing work. He adds that Gregor's recent performance has been unsatisfactory. Gregor disagrees and tells him that he'll open the door shortly. Nobody on the other side of the door could understand a single word he utters since he sounds like a bug and not a person. And they conclude that he is seriously ill. Finally, Gregor manages to unlock the door with his mouth, which is disgusting. Do you know how many germs there are on a doorknob? He apologizes to the office manager for the delay. Horrified by Gregor's appearance, his mother faints and the manager bolts out of the apartment. Gregor tries to catch up with him, but his father drives him back into the bedroom with a cane and a rolled-up newspaper. Gregor injures himself squeezing back through the doorway, and his father slams the door shut. Gregor, exhausted, falls asleep. Gregor awakens and sees that someone has put milk and bread in his room. Initially excited, he quickly discovers that he has no taste for milk, once one of his favorites. I hate it when that happens, when you love something and then suddenly you can't stand it. The next morning, his sister comes in, sees that he has not touched the milk, and replaces it with rotting food scraps. which Gregor happily eats. This begins a routine in which his sister feeds him and cleans up while he hides under the couch, afraid that his appearance will frighten her. Which, I don't understand. If she's willing to go into the room and clean up, I doubt she'd be scared by his appearance. Gregor spends his time listening through the wall to his family members talking. They often discuss the difficult financial situation they find themselves in now that Gregor cannot provide for them. And now I have to address something. Before the story began, Gregor's father's company went under and they lost a lot of money. To help his family, Gregor took the load of work, since his mother has asthma and his sister is a kid. His father got lazy and fat on the interim, and they got themselves accustomed to a certain level of comfort while Gregor was the sole provider, slaving out being a salesman. Which I think is, excuse my language, fucked up. It's one of the biggest issues I have with the story. They're forcing him to be the sole provider, which is why he has the sad, sad life that I talked about before, because his family is forcing him to do it so they can live comfortably. Anyway, I digress. Gregor had plans of sending Great to the conservatory to pursue violin lessons, something everyone else, including her, had considered a dream. He did care for his sister, and hey, you can't blame her for not getting a job. She's a kid. Gregor's incapability of providing for his family, coupled with his speechlessness, reduces his thought process greatly. Gregor also learns that his mother wants to visit him, but his sister and father will not let her, which I think is kind of dumb. His mother's a grown woman. She can visit an ugly giant bug if she wants. Gregor grows more comfortable with his changed body. He begins climbing the walls and ceiling for amusement. Discovering his new pastime, his sister decides to remove some of the furniture to give Gregor more space. She and her mother begin taking furniture away, but Gregor finds their actions deeply distressing. He tries to save a picture on the wall of a woman wearing a fur hat and a fur scarf. This is an interesting part. I perceived this as Gregor trying to hold on to his last vestige of humanity, since that picture was one of his only possessions in his room. Gregor's mother sees him hanging on the wall and passes out. His sister calls out to him, the first time anyone has spoken directly to him since his transformation, which does give him some of his humanity back, and so Gregor runs out of the room and into the kitchen. The father throws an apple at Gregor, and it sticks into a sensitive spot in his back, and remains lodged there, paralyzing his movements for a month and damaging him. Gregor manages to get back into his bedroom, but is severely injured. One evening, the cleaning lady leaves Gregor's door open while three boarders, whom the family has taken on for additional income, lounge about the living room. His sister has been asked to play the violin for them, and Gregor, who usually took care to avoid crossing paths with anyone in the apartment in the midst of his depression and resultant detachment, creeps out of his bedroom to listen, since he likes his sister's music. The boarders, who are initially interested in her, grow bored with the performance, but Gregor is transfixed. One of the boarders spots him, and the rest become alarmed. Gregor's father tries to shove the boarders back into their rooms, but the men protest and announce that they will move out immediately without paying rent because of the disgusting conditions in the apartment. And that's bullshit. One giant bug and they move out? I live in New York. I've seen worse. His sister, who has by now become tired of taking care of him, and is realizing the burden that his existence puts on each one in the family, tells her parents that they must get rid of Gregor or they will be ruined. Her father agrees, wishing Gregor could understand them and would leave of his own accord. Gregor does in fact understand and slowly moves back to the bedroom. There, determined to rid his family of his presence, Gregor dies of starvation. I feel bad for Gregor. He didn't ask to be a bug, and what were they going to do? Set loose a giant bug on their town? Gregor's family is terrible, and that's probably attributed to Kafka's strained relationship with his father. Also, another interesting thing is that Franz Kafka also died of starvation. He had gotten very ill and could not eat, and so it's very interesting to see that this character went the same way he did. Upon discovering that he's dead, the family is relieved. The father kicks out the boarders and decides to fire the cleaning lady who has disposed of Gregor's body, which I wonder how they did it. Did they shove it into a bunch of garbage bags and throw it in a dumpster, or did they just dump it in their trash can outside their house? Wonder what the garbage collector would have thought of that. The family takes a trolley ride out to the countryside, during which they consider their finances. They decide to move to a smaller apartment to further save money, an act they were unable to carry out in Gregor's presence. During this short trip, Mr. and Mrs. Samsa realize that in spite of going through hardships which had brought an amount of paleness to her face, their daughter appears to have grown up into a pretty and well-figured lady, which leads her parents to think about finding her a husband. And then the next day, she becomes a giant bug. Just kidding. And that was the Metamorphosis. It was a great story, but the Samsa's treatment of Gregor after his transformation is unforgivable, and I really hate them. Otherwise, the story was solid and the characters seemed real. I sympathize with Gregor for most of the book because of his sad, sad life. I give this a rating of must-read. Anyway, next week, Classic Novel Month 2 continues with a book about 2 mice who become migrant farmers. Or at least that's what Wikipedia says. See you next time.